Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Kirch. I am presenting the 5:15 p.m. Intro to Zenoss here at Southeast Linux Fest. If this is not your scheduled flight, you may wish to disembark now. Thank you everybody for coming out. It's been an awesome show. I want to thank Zenoss for sending me. This is my first time here. I'd like to thank the tech guys for doing a fantastic job. The Google Hangouts thing is really cool. So if you're watching this, it may be recorded. You may also be watching us live on Google. So, hello to everyone. So this is the introduction to Zenoss. So what is Zenoss and what do you really need to know to get started? So it helps if you're a systems administrator. And it helps to do that if for no other reason than that you have something to monitor. We are a network monitoring and management product. So that is a basic prerequisite, and at a minimum, it does help if the devices at least respond to ping. Going from there, it helps to know some bash. Python is awesome, though getting less needed with each release. And if you understand the basic technology of SNMP, WMI, WinRM, and how to generate and use SSH keys, that's also a huge help. As Toros Balrog of OpenNMS said earlier, 10 years ago, if you could even spell SNMP, you'd get a $100,000 a year job. So, hopefully everybody has seen SNMP now. I am Andrew Kirch. As I said, I am the community manager at Zenoss. I've done lots of systems and network administration, more of it than I care to think about. I've been in before this, I worked at I was principal at a company that did Asterisk box deployments and custom solutions based on Asterisk. Before that, I was senior network administrator at a local internet service provider. So that's, the last 10 years of my life. I've also done a lot of monitoring in that time. I've used a product called Argus, which probably nobody has ever heard of. I've used a product called N-Central by Enable, which probably nobody has ever heard of, but it does in-depth. Well, we've got 2 N-Central people. This is the first time ever. How much fun is reinstalling all those probes when they break?
It takes like 2 minutes.
Yeah, but you still have to do, is it still like every day you're having to reinstall them?
No.
Okay, that's cool. Because like when I was doing it, it was like 2 minutes times 10 machines every time you went out to a site every day. So that sounds like that's got better. And of course, Zenoss, which is where I work today. Just to prove that I am a system administrator, the worst thing that I ever broke was at a company that had an Amanda backup server, and I had an errant space in my RMRF, and I accidentally deleted var. And the reason why that was the only bad directory I could possibly have deleted is that var had the library of what was on what tape in the tape robot, which means that we had to manually go through the tapes to find var and restore it. I broke our network in the only way fundamentally that it could be broken and not be easily recovered in like 5 minutes. So we had to go through each tape, iterate through until we found var. Manually untarring each tape in the tape robot, it took hours. I cannot tell you how much pizza and beer I bought as an apology for that. But it was a simple 1-character typo, and I didn't catch it until I hit enter, and something that should have taken half a second didn't come back. And at that point, I knew I had a problem in my life. So what we're going to cover here is why you might be here. It's a story I tell about network monitoring, and one that I've seen many times in life. And it's a sad story. Why Zenoss fixes that problem, and why you might probably want to use Zenoss. I assume that you're at least interested in Zenoss since you're here. I'll do a demonstration of Zenoss, kind of show you how to get involved in the community. I'm the community manager, so I got to do at least something self-serving in my talk. Show you where to get it, and of course the fun part, which is questions and answers. And as I said before the start of the Google Hangout, unless you're on Google Hangouts, whoever asks the best question based on the decision of the audience will get an orange Zenny. So this is the sad story. You work at an IT company. They got you some neat stuff, and you have to monitor it. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, we've listed possibilities. It could be a database. It could be anything, but it's crucial to the business, and you have to monitor it. And it's going to die because everything that we do dies. And it'll die in short order, and you're responsible for it. You're going to get blamed when it dies, and you're going to get doubly blamed if you don't fix it quickly. So it did die, and you fixed the problem. You're the new IT guru. You're a hero. And now everything is your problem. And I hear people snickering, so I know they've been through this. So you realize that you need to monitor all this new stuff, and you installed something you found after searching Google. Could be open source, could be closed source, could just do pings. You know, it could be anything. But hey, you search Google. It's how we fix all of our problems. None of us know anything except for how to use Google. So your boss comes in Monday morning. We got this new app. The marketing department needs it. And you'd never heard of this before. Of course, they didn't bother to tell you. There's no vetting that was done by the IT department. But hey, you get to monitor that now too. And you go to your app that you downloaded from Google, and it doesn't monitor it. So you deploy the app, and you know bad things are coming. We all do. You Google monitoring the new app because, hey, it worked the last time. And you get another monitoring product, and you install that as well. And the app crashed and you didn't know. And the reason why you didn't know was your new monitoring software also couldn't be monitored with your old monitoring software. So your new monitoring software crashed, and then shortly after, the app that your marketing department depends upon went down too. And it's your fault. Again, doesn't matter that you didn't vet it. Doesn't matter that you didn't get any time to figure out a monitoring solution. It's still your fault. So now you're Googling monitoring software to monitor the two pieces of monitoring software that you already have installed. All right, this is dumb. It's ridiculous, and there has to be a better way. I mean, you're going to go through a number of iterations of this. I've seen companies that have 7 different monitoring platforms deployed to cover their entire network. And yes, this is a true story. And it's not just a true story once, it's a true story multiple times over. Because this is the problem, and there has to be a better way to do this. You have legacy hardware, you have bare metal servers, you have public and private cloud, you have the software that runs on those things, you have all this stuff, and maybe if you're really lucky, multiple internet connections and BGP to monitor as well. And it's all fun and games until that goes down, and then the whole company's dead. So it's a really ugly situation in the modern IT landscape. It's not like it was years ago. You buy a server, you install the server sits there until the hardware dies. You know, it's elastic, it's on demand, and I've even heard the Docker guys refer to it as slash and burn IT. We don't care about that server. It's going to be something else in 5 hours automatically. Well, how do you take care of that? So Zenoss's concept is to take care of that. Doesn't matter what it is, we have a way to monitor it. Is it going to speak SNMP? Is it going to speak WMI for Windows? We can do monitoring via SSH. If you have a Cisco router, Juniper router that speak SSH, is of course as well Linux BSD. Anything that speaks SNMP v2 MIB. There's an IETF RFC that almost everyone who's ever used SNMP has taken advantage of but may not know exists, and it defines basic components of just about everything. And most vendors are actually really good about using it. So that means that a lot of things out of the box that aren't super esoteric, if you stick them somewhere in the device hierarchy, you're going to get at least some of the SNMP v2 MIB, which will at least give you basic CPU, memory, disk, swap, and network interfaces. So it's a better start than nothing. As I said, we support most major operating systems out of the box, and there's tons of documentation now. So to achieve that and to be able to monitor everything, there are Zen packs. And Zen packs are like, Nagios calls them plugins, but they are additions to the monitoring software. You install them, put the device into the part of the tree that the Zen pack adds, and hit remodel, and it will go pick up all the new pieces of the hardware or software that you want it to monitor. And there's everything from cloud, AWS, Windows, Linux, Juniper, and it's not just hardware and operating systems. I recently wrote a Zen pack for postfix because I was unhappy with the postfix monitoring options that were out in the wild. So there's now a really like super comprehensive postfix Zen pack. And the only other monitoring software I found for postfix that was as good as what I wrote in my spare time was actually being sold as a commercial product for thousands of dollars. It's absolutely shameless. So to install Zenoss Core 5, just to get things off the ground, you're going to need a server, virtual, real, doesn't matter. 4 cores. They don't have to be particularly fast. You just need a couple of them in parallel. 20 gig of RAM, and a minimal install of Zenoss 7 or Ubuntu 14.4. Yes, you can make 12.4 work. It does take some work. You have to forklift a kernel onto it. And 14.4 is out anyway, so why not just go ahead and use it? And yes, you don't have to use an LTS version of Ubuntu, but since we plan to be around, we're going to. Yes? I did typo that, didn't I? So 14.4, not 14.14. It's not a modem. Thank you, nitpicker in chief up here, who's giving me grief because I gave him grief before the beginning. So I did have that one coming. And you can get it on the wiki. It does take about an hour to install because it has to pull a bunch of Docker images, and I'll show you how that works here in a second. And it's all automated and amazingly painless. By the way, if you do try to install this at the last minute because your VirtualBox crashed 5 minutes before you have to talk at the hotel, it will still be installing while you're beginning your speech, and it just barely finished in time. I had that happen about 1.5 years ago. So let's get to the demo. As we, okay, how do I make you not embiggened? Oh, that works even better. So that was fixing the issue that we had. So this is Control Center, and as I said, the new version of the software, version 5, is based on Docker. And Docker, as I mentioned earlier, believes in what they call slash and burn IT. Nothing's permanent anymore. Everything's elastic and scales via run files to as many or as few as you need. But there's not really orchestration, and if you have one thing that you're running in Docker, you have to do all the plumbing to hook up the next thing that's running in Docker, and that may or may not work as you're expanding, and you're going to spend 8 hours in a chef class to make it work. By the way, the chef class was over there. You've missed it if you're sure. So that's not going to work. So let me show you, maybe there's something better than all of that. And what we've come up with is Zenoss Control Center. Now, Zenoss Control Center allows you to export via URL various pieces that you might be interested in. So we use OpenTSDB now for metrics. If you want to get directly to the OpenTSDB interface, write a custom report, pull custom data out of OpenTSDB, it's right there. You absolutely can do that. Great for scripting, great for hitting with things. You can also access HBase directly or go to Zenoss 5. All the assignments, everything that you need. I can't make that fit, unfortunately, due to the projector, but I will kind of scroll through. All of this is automatically coordinated, and you can, for instance, say, well, I'm running Zope, but I need a couple more Zopes, so we'll add 2 more Zopes. So all this can be done on the fly to adjust configuration, and it will work across a cluster, which is something Docker does not do natively. So you can add Control Center slaves to the Control Center master, and it will deploy either based on your specification of a resource pool, or it can automatically deploy to the resource pool that has the most resources available. And any Docker application that you have a run file for, you can write a simple YAML definition, and it will be Control Center ready. So this is a completely separate product. It's also open source under the Apache license. So not only do we use this for orchestration, you absolutely can as well. So moving on to the product itself, this is the Zenoss dashboard. And again, we're going to do the best we can with the small resolution because we're actually designed for 1024, but life will go on. So you see a couple of things here. We'll close this because that actually gets us the map. So we have a map. We can do location-based monitoring. The easiest way to explain that is that your third shift not monkey, which breaks half the thing that he touches, doesn't need to know about outages that are in data centers that he's not in because he's not smart enough to actually know where he is. So if you have a large NOC staff, it makes your life much easier. You can get them accounts and drill them down just to the locations that they're at and just to the events that they care about, allowing them to triage things that they're actually going to be able to fix. I don't know why it does that. That is like the default for Google Maps. Like it sticks me in the middle of Canada. Apparently it thought I was going to BSDCan this week. That's the only thing I can figure. So first thing you do once you get online and look at the amazing Google map and say, hey, that's really pretty, is you're going to want to add some devices, and that's very easy. We have an add a device dialog, and based on the device class, you can fill in the information you need. For instance, if you're in Server Microsoft Windows, it'll ask you for an Active Directory username and password, and we do have documentation on making that least possible privilege. So that does not necessarily require global admin rights to work. So depending on what you're doing, if it's SNMP, it'll give you SNMP community. If it's not, it will give you username and password for SSH, or let you specify a key file. It just depends. So let's go to that I had it on here. I don't. That's a good basic. So this is a DDWRT router, runs Linux, runs SNMP. And I mentioned SNMP v2 MIB standard earlier. So that makes it actually easy to get useful things like file system information, IP services. This is all gotten automatically. I'm going to show you how that works in a second. All the network interfaces, default routes, and processor information. And with all those, you get pretty, I'm going to be really sad if you don't get to see these graphs. Anybody a Safari expert that knows how to do like 50% zoom? Command minus? Awesome, you are my hero. So, the new graphs are all rendered in HTML5 on demand. They are, as you can see, interactive. And they also can be, if you're doing like a custom one-off report, exported to CSV or provide a direct link to the graph. So you can do reporting both inside and out of Zenoss. That's a great way to write a quick dashboard applet if you need a specific graph on the dashboard. So this is just what SNMP v2 MIB gets you. None of this is enterprise monitoring at all. This is just the standard. Let's pull out a more complicated device and show you what you get with enterprise. This is a Juniper SRX 220. Anybody here a Cisco user? Anybody here Juniper users? All right, so there's a couple of you. There is an awesome Zen pack for Cisco called Cisco MIB, which supports every MIB Cisco's ever written. You do have to do kind of the custom definitions yourself. Say, I care about this, I care about this, I care about this. But all of them are there. You click a button, they all install. For Juniper users, because it's Junos and everything is stable and standard and they all run the same software unless it's a net screen, and then that doesn't count. You have this awesome ability to plug one Zen pack in, and with the exception of the SRX, which has IPsec firewalls, which in case you put it in Juniper Firewall, everything just goes in Juniper. And it will completely enumerate every resource on the device, down to the power supplies, routing engines, so you can get alerts if any component inside of that router fails. You also can get, even though this doesn't have any, BGP session, per session on BGP. And it doesn't have it built in, but you could copy and paste to do per session on is or per session on OSPF. Absolutely. The next thing you're going to ask me, of course, is IPv6 support. It will be coming in 5.1. We had to wait for Docker, which Intel version 1.5 did not support IPv6. So we are going to leverage 1.5 with the next major release, and IPv6 should be a non-issue for those monitoring. And some IPv6 will work today. It's just not quite as clean as we'd like. So going in here, for instance, GE, for those that know this Juniper nomenclature, this is your network throughput for your main internet connection, and you can label these and change these and do some arbitrary things with them. So I've shown you, a Linux machine, shown you a Juniper machine. I don't have any Windows machines on my network for religious reasons. I'm sure you can understand that. But we do have an awesome Windows Zen pack, which leverages WinRM and WinRS. And if you're not familiar with those, Microsoft has, as they tend to do, decided in the middle of its life that we just don't want to support WMI anymore. we're bored. We're going to write a totally new thing and make you support it, which they did and we did, and we are one of the few open source products that fully leverages WMI across Active Directory, MSSQL, IIS, God help you if you have to run that, Active Directory, and Exchange. So if you're running Windows, we've got you covered. If you're running Windows and you don't use Zenoss, just assume it's down. It's usually the safe way to go. I apologize, I'm from the north, so I find it to be quite hot down here, so I'm drinking a little bit of water. So events, and I have one event. I had to rebuild this system in a hurry on Wednesday, and one of my machines didn't model. When you get an event that comes in, they're of course prioritized by what we think is as a severity. You can change that severity yourself. It's very simple to do. You use what's called a Python transform. It's evt.severity equals whatever. And it's all that can be done in totally arbitrary Python, and you can pull just about any piece of the event out, change it to whatever you want. And then we move into triggers and notifications because we actually want to do something with that. And this is a machine I didn't put any triggers or notifications on. So awesome. So we'll call this self 15-1. I'm sorry, I can't put a dash in there. That's right. Self 15, whatever. So one of the really irritating things about network monitors, because in my life I've been on call. Who's woke up at 3 a.m. because their network monitor went off and it wasn't something you even cared about? Okay, I see like at least a third. Okay, so who is not raising their hand and is lying? Okay, I'm seeing like 5 more hands come up. So about 2/3 of the room has been woke up in the middle of the night because their network monitor went off and it wasn't even something they cared about. Or it was scheduled maintenance. That's the better part. Hey, there's scheduled maintenance tonight. You're on call. All of a sudden 18 things go down. You're calling your boss. Yeah, we're just over at the data center doing scheduled maintenance. You didn't get that memo? Sometimes you don't get the right cover sheet on that TPS report. So you can do very, very complex logic to generate specific events that you care about, and you can throw a catch-all in as well that maybe doesn't escalate to the same people. Yes?
Sort of a twist on what you said. I've seen with a monitoring system, like if you had a remote office or something, some communication link went down, router went down, it reports everything downstream.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, somebody takes care of that.
I'm sorry, you've got a blue question sheet there?
Yeah.
Oh, certainly. So he's saying that, and this is like the most annoying thing in the world. So you've got multiple sites, and you've got VPNs are the common cause of this, but the link between the two sites goes down that you're monitoring over, and now you're getting 1,000 events from the far end because it can't recover SNMP data, it can't recover WMI data, so every machine is throwing events. With that transform system that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, you can put the IP addresses of those various router endpoints in, and if it gets an event for those, it'll suppress everything behind. Takes a little bit of Python, but 15 to 20 minutes per router, and you'll never have that problem again.
So you can't do it automatically. You can't figure out the graph,
We do have layer 2 graphing, and the Python transform takes advantage of that. It's just not really a feature that's on out of the box. If you go to the wiki, the example code in Python is there. You basically just have to paste that in and put the net blocks that you don't care about if that router's down. So what it'll do is it'll say, hey, does this router claim it's down? Yeah, okay, suppress that event. So all you have to do is put the correct information in for that router, and you're good to go. And that's pretty straightforward. But any different piece that comes in the event, we can make decisions based on down to, and hey, here's IP address. So if the IP address is behind the router, now the Python will have already taken care of it, but you could also do some basic filtering there. So let's say, we'll do something simple here. Where's event severity? Severity equals, what do we want to say? Greater than or equals. I'm sorry, I've already got that one already below. So let's do device production state. equals production. And you can fork these out and say, and production state equals pre-production. And you can define custom production states as well. So you can say, I only care at 3 a.m. if it's these production states. You don't want to know if a test system goes down at 3 a.m. Nobody cares. You'll kick it over tomorrow morning. So, we've taken care of you there. So we get these events. What can we do with them? Let's go over to the notification side, and we will create a notification. I'm going to use a phrase here in a second that security people will cringe at, and it will be the first time you've heard this phrase in a positive light. So this is always fun, because I always can tell who is a security person in the room. So I've created 2 notifications. Let's go to the one that's going to make everybody cringe first. So I can take this notification, map my trigger I already created to it, and I can run an arbitrary remote command based on that trigger or notification, as long as there's a keyless SSH key on the network monitoring system. So I can take this and say, hey, the Apache server on this machine died, restart it. Okay, second time around, count 2, restart it. Third time around, count 3. Okay, now I'm going to email somebody. So you can do escalation by event count. It's a very simple way to do escalation. In the event of a problem, it's 5 minutes between monitoring cycles, so or whatever is defined in your system. But we can do basic remediation of daemons being down or of other conditions based entirely on what you want to program. And this is also a great time, by the way, to hook into the Puppet or Chef REST APIs. Yeah, question in the back.
On this, can you run commands on Linux machines as well?
So the question is, can you run commands on Linux machines or on Windows machines, or is it just Linux? So first of all, I want to say that that's a false dichotomy. There's also routers and all sorts of networking equipment that could take SSH logins. And yes, you can run remote commands on those. To answer your question, can you do this on Windows? With WinRM, you can, because the other piece of WinRM is WinRS, which is remote shell. And that would allow you to log in and, say, kick over a system-level service, or even reboot the entire box. Or I'm sure that there's a way to kick it with a correct command that would cause the machine to just shut down and install Ubuntu. So that would be the best option if possible. But, I do understand that there are times when you just can't run Ubuntu. Or Zenoss. Yes, another question in the back. So logging is a slightly larger question, but there's absolutely no reason. The question was, can you copy the logs off before you take an action? And yes, absolutely you can. There's absolutely no reason why you can't SCP log files that look like they might be relevant to the error before doing that. Again, passwordless SSH keys are awesome and can accomplish many things. But my real answer to that would be remote syslog or products like Splunk or Logstash, Elasticsearch, Kibana, Graylog are your friends. And there's another good reason to use those, which is that Zenoss has a syslog consumer. And you can run all of your system logging into Splunk, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, or Graylog, and send only events that you care about to Zenoss syslog out of that, and be able to generate alerts and have all those alerts in a single pane of glass, and have those alerts actually tell somebody that we care. Any alert that comes in from a syslog source, you can again run Python transforms in to provide additional context and enrich the event to give the person that's getting that event at 3 a.m. something more useful than a snippet of a log file. So any other questions before I move on? Once, twice, moving on. Excellent. So back to the PowerPoint presentation. I pretty much covered this. Reports are basic reporting written in, so I forgot the name of it. It's a scripting language for ZOAP, and it's just completely skipped me, and I apologize for that. But there are plenty of pre-programmed reports, and many Zen packs already come with the necessary reporting built in. So if you're running Windows, there are already Windows reports built into the Zenpack. Same with Juniper. The same with almost any of the community Zenpacks. That should make it much easier. And as I mentioned, APIs earlier, we do have a REST API that can be hit that uses JSON, and that's documented. So if, for instance, you're provisioning a device in Chef, or you even have a full CMDB, and you're putting the device into the inventory for the DB and telling it to do this in Chef, you can also spit into Zenoss, hey, this is a Linux server, it runs Apache. Hey, this is a Linux server, it runs MySQL. Now, you'll have to have the credentials in here, but that's pretty simple and straightforward and automated. And you can keep those in sync, especially useful if you're doing on-demand, adding varnish caches, adding web servers, adding SQL databases to the cluster on demand to load balance. So if you have an environment like that with the modeling set up, we can spin things up and down in real time on demand. Let me go to one more piece on that, because I did kind of gloss over this, and I promised I would show it. So I'm betting I get no hands on this. Has anybody ever used ClearOS? So ClearOS is awesome. It's basically Red Hat, CentOS, with a web UI on the front, and DNS, DHCP, anything you need on the LAN, almost a complete small business server replacement running Linux. I've used the daylights out of this thing for over a decade. It is awesome. So monitoring it, we have all these components here. Well, how do we find out about those? So the way that we find out about those is that Zenoss will log in via SSH. And it takes a second. There we go. And it will get into the system here. And I'm going to show you like the one most useful tip. And I'm going to break his rule and step off camera just long enough to point to something for everybody that's in the room. When you run the model, it's going to spit a lot out and say, hey, we've collected all these things. And let's say that you've made a change to the device for some reason. You've added more RAM, you've rebuilt the RAID array, anything that's going to kind of change the basic components of the disk. Look for this line. See here it says no change in configuration detected. What you'll look for when you know that your changes have been taken is it'll say changes in configuration applied. So having that changes in configuration applied basically tells you, hey, this thing that I did, I can probably go back into my components and now it'll be there. Just to give you an idea of what you get from, and it'll refresh with the new components, and to give you an idea of what you get from there, full CPU metrics, memory metrics, monitor swap files. I think this is SSH and we're still going to have the Ethernet bug, and we are. So if it's SNMP, you will get graph data on network interfaces. If it's SSH, you won't, and that should be fixed shortly. That was a bug that crept in 5. File systems, block utilization, inode utilization. So it gives you an idea of your disk usage. OS processes, it noticed that it's running Apache, so it will immediately pull out HTTPD. You can also add an Apache Zenpack to get further Apache information if Apache is running mod stats. Question?
Where's the storage for these graphs? Is it Route Python stuff?
No. So our RD tool, I can't say anything bad about it. So the question was, where do the files, where is the backend for the graphs? I don't want to trash talk RRD. I've used RRD for so long. I have nothing but love for Tobias. He's an awesome guy if you ever get to meet him. But RRD tool in an enterprise scaling application is severely I/O intensive because of the way it writes to the RRD file. It puts a line at the end and shifts everything back. And that's a lot of writes and reads. We've switched to OpenTSDB, which is a time series database, and we use Redis for the initial data point collection and caching, and then that will send the data on to HBase and populate it into OpenTSDB.
So scalability-wise, what's that storage?
To completely rip off a Pixar movie to infinity and beyond. The question was, what will it scale to? If you keep throwing hardware at it, it will keep scaling. It is almost, because it's big data, it's almost perfect horizontal storage. It's the same technology that Google uses for horizontal scaling. I mean, it will scale to Google. I keep getting them to try it just to prove that it will. And as I said, hey, you can add more ZOPs on demand in Control Center. You can do that with other pieces as well. Maybe you need more Zen Hub workers. Maybe you need more Zen jobs. So those pieces, you can add additional workers as needed. And as I showed you earlier with the Control Center, you can say, hey, this goes on the specific piece of hardware. So if you had 1 million Windows machines, I feel bad for you. I've got 99 problems and none of them are that. But if you have 1 million Windows machines, you can put the Windows collector, you can put Python collector, which is the backend for WinRM, WinRS, on its own dedicated hardware so that it will scale. So we don't have, other than like an absurd event storm, like billions of events somehow happened, we don't have a scenario where the product can't keep up. Unless you hit a bug or something. As far as scaling, it really will scale to just about anything you might need. Questions before I move back to the PowerPoint? I guess you guys really like PowerPoint. So Zenoss has an active support community. And something that I always mention, I didn't mention thus far, is everything I've shown you is open source. Everything I've shown you besides the Juniper Zen Pack is developed by Zenoss. The Juniper Zen Pack was developed by a community member, and it is an awesome Zen Pack. It's also GPL. So you can get, the vast majority, if not everything that's on your network monitored using only open source. So nothing I'm showing you is commercial. Nothing I'm showing you is going to be a license fee. I'm not going to reach into your back pocket on my way out and take your wallet. I might. You better watch it. So you go to GitHub. We have a wiki which is maintained by the community. On the wiki, you have many things. Let's move on to the wiki slide before I start talking about it. So first of all, we have both Zenoss and community source documentation. Documentation's always been difficult to keep up with the main product, and we've enlisted the community to help us there. We also have the Zen Pack catalog that has over 400 Zen Packs. I'm assuming he's chuckling because he's seen the learning curve picture. I love using this picture. Any enterprise piece of software has a learning curve to go with it, some of which are more esoteric in shape than others. But there are days where even I, as an employee of Zenoss, have felt like that. And the 9 times out of 10 when I'm struggling or I've gotten stuck, even as an employee, the answer's already on the wiki and I just wasn't looking in the right place. So the wiki is an amazing, amazing resource, and definitely use it. And that wasn't a question. He was just snickering at me. So we have tips for creating transforms and templates. So I discussed what transforms are earlier. Templates are the pieces that actually take data from a command SSH data source or data from an SNMP OID and bring them into the product and allow you to set thresholds, allow you to generate events. They're the piece that's sitting behind what I was showing you earlier. So there's a Linux template for Linux devices. There's an SSH template for SSH devices. All you have to do, it's all point and click creation in the UI. It's very simple. Question? Looked like you had a question there, I'm sorry. So development guide, we have an extensive development guide. In fact, we have 2. We now have one for building Zen Pack entirely from scratch, which is almost always not going to be needed. But we have a new piece called Zen Pack Lib. And Zen Pack Lib will allow you to take a simple, and I believe it's a YAML markup language file, and it will take that markup file, run it through Zen Pack Lib automatically when it loads into the product, generate your templates, generate your transforms, generate the modelers. We saw modelers earlier, so it'll generate your modelers on the fly based on what's in the YAML document. It relieves about 85% of the code necessary to create a Zen Pack. All of that is done in the background for you now. Additionally, you can populate the components and add custom components. We have extensive forums, and they're very active. There's usually, 30 or 40 posts a day on the forums. So not only are people asking questions, they're also getting help. I know I answer 200 or 300 forum posts a quarter. So just depending on, whether that question gets answered by a community member first, don't worry, I'll get it if they don't. Other Zenoss employees are on the forums, contractors are on the forums, and members of the community. So if you had a custom Zenpack and didn't want us to develop it for you, we have a cottage industry of Zenpack consultants and contractors that are out there that do Zenpacks. And the Juniper Zenpack was written by one of them. Their work is top notch. We also have a community blog. So this is the only patent lie in my talk. Updated several times a month. It would be if I had time. Honestly, I do the best I can, but that's a patent lie. Usually it's once a month. Hopefully that's going to change and we're going to get some more blog posts. But that also contains the dev hours schedule. Dev hours is awesome. You get Zenoss, you got this one piece you can't monitor for some reason. Come to dev hours. We have developers who will get on IRC and our IRC channel. It's found Zenoss on irc.freenode.net. And they will spend an hour in the channel answering development questions that people may have. Whether it's a control center application you're trying to write, or it's a Zenpack lib issue, or transforms. So you're trying to write a transform. Or you can't get a template to work exactly how you want it to. There are devs that are specialized in all those, and the subject matter rotates it's twice a week, so it rotates each session. And usually you'll see the same subject come up multiple times in a quarter. So if you're wanting answers for your Zenpack, that is a great way to get it. On to IRC. As I've already covered the dev hours, IRC channel is very active. There's usually 6,000 lines of chat a month. That's several hundred lines of chat a day. If it's not busy when you're there, you've gotten there at the wrong time, but usually 9 to 5. If you ask a question, you'll have an answer within 10 to 15 minutes. Pretty straightforward. Dev hours, as I said, the schedule is posted quarterly, and the schedule is on the never updated Zenoss blog. So take a look there, and you will have a schedule that should help you find out when to get to dev hours. And it's IRC. I'm not taking pictures of text on a screen. So we get to the last slide. This is the final question slide. There is a Zenny to be awarded. So first off, I want to thank everybody from Self, including the nice tech people who even had questions. And I'm going to open it up to the floor if anybody has questions about Zenoss. And whoever asks the best question at the end gets a Zenny. Yes, in the back. On the remote host or on the, so the question is system resources and how do we compare as far as using them? And there's a follow-up question that has to be asked here on the target, the machine that you're monitoring, or on or resources for the monitoring software itself. Okay, so Zenoss is agentless, and that means that we put the load where it should be. We don't have a proprietary agent that sits on your remote host and chews up resources. With Linux, you're going to have SSH, so we can already use SSH to monitor it. If it's a Docker container, we can already use SSH, log into the main Docker host, and pull the metrics through Docker for most things. It's not quite as comprehensive as going into the OS, but that's another option. We don't put a proprietary monitoring agent on anything. There's no, for instance, Nagios NRPE or those enable probes that I was complaining about earlier. He knew that was coming. I am so psyched that there's someone that knows my pain here. So psyched. That was so awful. And I'm not really bashing a competitor. They do desktop monitoring. They are excellent at what they do, but back in the day, the probes wouldn't stay installed for more than 5 minutes. So on your target, the thing where you care about resources, we consume almost nothing. To do a basic Zenoss install, 4 CPU cores, 20 gigs of RAM, and a terabyte of hard disk. Should last you essentially for as long as you want to run version 5. Next question. Yes?
I'm coming from a managed service provider perspective.
Sure.
What's the scenario, for that amount of resource, I don't see deploying that at each client, but so what would the scenario be for forwarding that through or whatever the case may be from a central monitoring server to?
So the question is MSP or multi-tenant, I think really is kind of the industry term for that. And I give you the same answer I gave this gentleman down here. Set up a VPN to each client, and you may not be able to give them a portal. Multi-tenant is a commercial feature, so you can go that route if you want to. But I'm just here to talk about the free software. So you can do VPN to every client site, generate reports for each client, and be able to do per client site monitoring. And with the transform I mentioned earlier for event behind a router suppression, you shouldn't get hit with event storms if the VPN tunnel collapses, for instance. So that would be the easiest way to do it with version 5. That said, I'm going to challenge the basis of your question. I'm going to tell you why. I had the same concern that you did, and we started a challenge inside of, it was kind of our solutions team. It was a gentleman named Eric Edgar, who's a Zenoss master, and myself. Who can find the cheapest machine on eBay that will run Zenoss? I won $125 plus shipping. It's an old Dell PowerEdge, two quad core Xeons, and 32 gig of RAM, $125. So people look at that 20 gig of RAM in the concept of, hey, this is like in my cloud stack or OpenStack, or I'm going to have to buy a $4,000 a month AWS instance. If you want to just put it on bare metal's still cheap. That answer your question? What can I still answer? It shouldn't be good enough. Come on now.
With these clients that I'm looking at, there's a lot of same IP network numbering schemes in place. So a standalone tunnel, I would imagine, would work out for that type of scenario.
It could potentially not. The suggestion I would make at that point is many-to-many NAT, and I feel dirty making that suggestion, so I apologize. So it's not an ideal situation when you've got multiple RFC 1918 networks that have the same address space, whether it's multi-tenant or not. Next question. Well, yes, I am a huge proponent of IPv6, and the solution is switch to IPv6 tomorrow. Our runs out of IP addresses, folks. They have part of a /11 left. So it's time to move. There's 11 undecillion, I believe it was. I got this talk from Mondo long and scale. 11 undecillion IPv6 addresses. We aren't running out of those anytime soon. Next question. Yes?
How would you say architect a system or system of systems that can manage or monitor like 5,000 nodes? Would it be simpler to get a lot of little ones and cluster them, or just a bunch of big servers?
5,000 might be pushing the core version, but I do know people that do it. If I was going to try to do it, the first thing I would try is getting a couple of lower end servers. And again, I'm not pro services, and there is a dev hours for this question, so they may differ from my answer. But I get 3 or 4 of those small boxes and break out Hadoop, break out OpenTSDB, break out MariaDB, all on the dedicated hardware, and see if that wouldn't get you there, because it ought to get you close. And you'd want to crank up the Zen Hub workers, and you'd want to crank up the Zope instances. But it probably will get you to 5,000. It would be close. I'd be curious to find out what happened, and I'll give you a business card when I'm done, just because I'll be curious to see if you get it to work, but it should work. Did I actually repeat his question? His question was on scaling to 5,000 hosts. See, you don't even have to pick up your piece of paper anymore. I'm getting good at this. It's almost as if I'm being paid. Yes?
For the multi-tenants, or how about SOC servers?
How's about, I'm sorry?
Using individual SOC servers, SOC 5.
So the question is, why not use SOC 5 instead of a VPN? And the answer to that is, and I don't know about SSH, but there's a lot of pieces. I know WinRM, not going to go over a SOC's proxy. So your problem would be actually getting the protocols over the proxy. I think you're heading down the road of creating more work than you're going to solve. My personal opinion, again, haven't tried it, but knowing the product, I think you probably are going to create more work than you're probably going to solve. So I wouldn't go the route of a SOX proxy. Other questions? In the back, yes.
Back to multi-tenanting. That's talked about today. You said that there's a multi-tenant solution in the enterprise.
That's correct.
So like polars at the site, or are they still full-fledged Zenoss that just happen to report back in home?
We would use a remote collector solution at the remote site. The question was, how does the enterprise product handle remote site? And there's a UI piece, and then there's remote collectors, and those collectors get assigned a tenant. I'm not completely familiar with that piece. Again, I'm the community manager. I only use the open source software. So, I want to be as fair a representative as possible, and that would be another, hey, ask this question at a dev hours when professional services is doing a dev hours. I already covered that question. Now I'm confusing myself. So any other questions? Going once, twice. So my favorite question, I'm going to hopefully get a show of hands that agrees. The gentleman in the back that asked about the running remote remedial commands on Windows hosts, since Windows doesn't do SSH. That was my favorite question. Would everybody else go with that as being the most awesome question? Or we got 2 hands, 3 hands? Does anybody have another question they like better? All right, with unanimous consent, I'm going to go ahead and end the talk. Thank everybody for being here. Thank you to Self for having me. I love being down here. You guys have done awesome. And I'm going to throw this Zenny at the guy in the back and probably hit somebody 3 chairs over. 3 chairs diagonal. I was close. So thank you all very much. Hey, that's probably an improvement. That probably was accidentally better. By the way, anybody with questions or needs to get a hold of me, I know there's a start up here. Yeah, that to me would make the talk better.
So you do things like tape libraries?
If it'll speak SNMP, absolutely. And there should be standard med entries for tape libraries. I wouldn't know. I only break those.
Break them?
Well, I broke the Amanda tape archive. That was a horrible, horrible mistake, which I promise will never, ever happen again until it does. That was kind of what they did, yes. They started SCPing it to a remote machine. Like the director of IT looked at this, looked at the thing after the Amanda fiasco, and just looked at it and said, "You've fundamentally broken this in the only way that it could be broken, so we're not even mad." Windows or smart solutions.
Citrix Zen Server gives you everything you need to integrate, manage, and automate a virtual data center, all on an enterprise-class, cloud-proven virtual platform, and at 1/3 of the cost of other solutions. But why even bother with virtualizing your server infrastructure in the first place? Well, let's say you have a traditional one server to one application architecture, but you're running out of resources and performance is suffering. Once you order new server hardware, you'll wait for delivery, configure it, install your business application, stage and test the server, and finally, add it to your production farm. If you've been through this process before, you know it can take weeks or even months. Also, it's a manually intensive process that will burden your team every time you outgrow your current setup. With a virtual server solution, you could accomplish all of that in less than half a day. Server virtualization software separates the OS and application from the underlying server hardware. And with multiple virtual machines on a single server, you can use each of them to run different OSs and applications. This makes it possible to move your virtual machines from one piece of hardware to another whenever you want, to maximize utilization, simplify maintenance, or recover from a hardware failure, and without slowing down your applications or users. Clearly, server virtualization provides big benefits, and Citrix Zen Server provides even more. Since it's built on an open platform, Zen Server plays well with your existing hardware, storage systems, and IT management software, as well as with the industry's leading cloud service providers. Best of all, you can get started by downloading a fully functional, production-ready version of Zen Server for free. After a 10-minute installation process, you'll see how easy it is to start virtualizing your workloads and automating your IT management processes. And when you're ready for a richer set of management tools, just upgrade to one of the premium editions of Zen Server. So whether you're interested in virtualizing servers for the first time, expanding your server virtualization footprint, or moving server workloads to the cloud, download and install Zen Server today and see how it can help you simplify your IT environment. Zen Server. Do more. Don't spend more.
So in other words, when you turn it on to Skype with the family.
Right, so when I'm, that would be the best case scenario. I can do that going much worse. I'll turn it off and do that.
Your customers rely on your website or application. If it's slow or non-responsive, it infuriates your users and costs you money. Keeping your business-critical systems humming along requires insight into what they're doing. Your system metrics tell stories that can reveal performance bottlenecks, resource limitations, and other problems. But how do you keep an eye on all of your system's performance metrics in real time and record this data for later analysis? Enter Longview, the new way to see what's really going on under the hood. The Longview dashboard lets you visualize the status of all your systems, providing you with a bird's-eye view of your entire fleet. You can sort by CPU, memory, swap, processes load, and network usage. Click a specific system to access its individual dashboard, then click and drag to zoom in on choke points and get more detail. Comprehensive network data, including inbound and outbound traffic, is available on the Network tab, and disk writes and free space on the Disks tab, while the Process Explorer displays usage statistics for individual processes. The System Info tab shows listening services, active connections, and available updates. Adding Longview to a system is easy. Just click the button, copy the one-line installation command, then run the command on your Linux system to complete the process. The agent will begin collecting data and sending it to Longview. Then the graphs start rolling. Use Longview to gain visibility into your servers, so when your website or app heats up, it stays up.
And so, yeah, I don't get water to tell you why I think I'm wrong.
So,